Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now.
Where have I failed? Let me count the ways. So many places, really. So many times. Granted, every time I do fail, I try to learn from my mistakes to not repeat those failures. There have been times I have repeated those failures, but I'd like to believe that I've learned something from each one of those failures. And, you could ask me about any particular perspective that I've had over the years, specifically in relation to small business. And it's my hope, at least with people who've registered on Nomees.com, to be able to help guide them along the path to success by bringing up where I have failed. And I realize that's like the antithesis, seemingly, of a mastermind group. Why would you share your failures? Why wouldn't you share your successes? To me, it's a bigger potential learning experience when you've failed at something rather than when you succeeded at something, because success can come accidentally. It could come through luck. It could come because you've planned for it. But failures sometimes just throw you for a loop, and you always learn something from failures. It's difficult to know what success feels like until you know what failure feels like. And I've done my best not to view something that has been a failure as, anything but a learning experience, something for growth, really, because we only have so much time in the day. We only have, so much that we can do on our own. And sacrifices are things that we certainly have to be mindful of. You can never do everything as a small business owner. I mean, you can try, but you may be limited. Your growth potential could be limited if you're just relying on yourself to get one thing or another done, especially if it's something that you do want to see happen. Over the years, I've definitely wanted to do certain things with the business, and I tried. And I would say it kind of worked, but not really. Ultimately, I've come back, almost full circle to creating content, much like I had done back in the mid-'90s, as the foundation for what I would consider one of my bigger successes. Having hit failure after failure after failure, but not accommodating those failures as failures. So, one of the first, I would say, time waste failures that I ran into would have been when one subscriber suggested that I go out and put the Locker Gnome logo on a T-shirt, not the classic, not the neo-looking Chris Pirillo one, but the classic Locker Gnome cartoon logo that I drew based on needing a logo for the website. And I thought, yeah, why not? Well, this is before putting a T-shirt or a mug together was easy. You had to go through branders and set up the whole process and get inventory and sit on inventory and sell it. And the tools, it's difficult to believe, but you had to roll your own back in the day. It's not that way anymore. There's such an amazing array of software solutions off the shelf that you can just choose immediately and be up and running. But after going through the whole rigmarole and getting lined up and getting all the merchandise, including bowling shirts and propeller beanies and all this, we launched and sold a handful maybe the first day, and then nothing. And it was just having 100,000 people who were subscribed to the newsletter. I thought we'd sell more, but unfortunately either the price was too high, which we couldn't drop any lower, or we would be out money, or people just generally weren't interested. So it was a good idea. It's just that, there's a reason why a lot of these T-shirts are kind of given away. A lot of these products and merchandise are just given because they're not really worth anything. They're a great marketing tactic, but beyond that, you're not really going to make a lot of money. Or I'll go as far as to say most people will not make a lot of money in that kind of merchandising, especially in today's era of anybody being able to point, click, and build their own store, and they could recreate the experience that took you forever to create. So I can't tell you how many weeks of time and effort went into doing something that ultimately did not pay off. But lesson learned. Now when anybody tells me they want to buy my logo, I say, well, yeah, maybe soon. But it's never going to happen again, other than through one of those easy to set up online stores. I've had similar issues in the past where I believed that I had value to provide that I wasn't currently providing, and being able to leverage my existing reach to more effectively offer something new. I had, this is a few years back, after doing LockerGnome, I was certainly still interested in publishing content, but I also saw a pretty big wave coming with tags, and I had an idea of aggregating all these tags onto one page and making it easier to search for tags across a variety of sites. And in doing that, it worked, but at the same time, it didn't take off, and it ended up being a time resource drain again, and I should have stuck to what I knew best. So doing even something like Nomies.com and this service is, I would say, a calculated risk. It was something that I wanted to do for quite some time, and I would say that based on the previous failures I've had on brand extensions and doing something more than what I'd done before, it's probably been, to this point, a bigger success, this particular subscription effort, and I have every reason to believe it's going to continue to be successful, largely because of the stage that I've been setting and knowing where to spend those resources wisely, and knowing that the customers have been coming to me almost from the very beginning, and I've never really had a solution for them, a scalable solution. So I already knew that people were coming to ask these questions, so being able to provide, I guess, a conduit to answer those questions was a big win, huge win. And so that is just based on my knowledge of what I've done in the past and what hasn't worked, crossed over with what I know people wanted from me, that is business intelligence or advice. I mean, every single day I get emails. What should I do here? What should I do there? How can I do this? How can I do that? To this point, I just push people off to general forum, or potentially even answer it in a question on YouTube, or on one of the blogs or in social media. But knowing that I already had customers was a big predictor for what would be the success of Nomies. And considering that in a month's time we had about 350 people sign up, and I really wasn't anticipating more than 100 in the first month, I'd say we've set the stage for growth. But it was only because I had potential paying customers that I knew that this idea could be successful. It's not that you could guarantee any degree of success, but certainly over the past things that I had tried to do with my name or my brand, I didn't know if I had customers, and that's largely how and why they failed. I took risks, but I would say that most of them didn't pay off because of scalability reasons. This is, I guess, a new effort for me, but it's largely based on knowledge that people want the information that I have to provide, or the resources that are at my disposal. I can effectively leverage them. And it worked. It was calculated, having those customers in hand, and really that's what makes a business a business. I mean, you can take a gamble and you say, I want to try something, but unless you know you got paying customers, you may be wasting your time. And that's what a lot of small businesses do. They waste their time. And they may build a great experience, but having a great experience does not mean that you're going to be deemed, quote-unquote, successful. So, I continue to make failures at every turn, and do my best to polish those failures into hopefully future successes. So now that we've had a few people join the Hangout here, are there any questions from the audience? The audience of registered Nomies? Great.
What was the question?
Questions. Well, it's something that I think is overlooked by a lot of people who are looking to get in business for themselves. A, where are they going to find the customers? B, are the customers already coming to them? and see what do I do first. And for instance, with Nomies, the experience has been largely positive. The issues that we've run into have largely been software issues. There's not a perfect software solution in terms of what we're trying to do, but stumbling through software issues has been probably the biggest hurdle we've had with the experience to this point. And we're continuously figuring out how to mitigate the problems that we run into. Sometimes it's a problem of misconfiguration or a faulty setup, one reason or another. Being able to get to those problems so they don't continue to be problems is probably the thing that I've spent the most amount of time on, more than anything. Doing value adds, that's easy. It comes like second hand to me, or second hat. Sorry, not second hand. It's first hand. Second hat. Sorry, I'm mixing metaphors again. You want to talk about a mistake, especially from an English major. I shouldn't do that, but I do. Any other failures you guys want to know about? I'm an open book. Let's talk about failure. See, people, they perceive failure. They think something's been a failure when in fact it hasn't. Some people would think that what I'm doing now is failure, and I guess it's relative. I'm getting the bills paid. I'm going in a positive direction, and my customers are happy. So if that's a failure, color me happy for being a failure. I think most people may believe it's failure when in fact it's just a misconception.
I know that you can have like minor failures where you'll have some like a down spout and then you'll have success again. Did you ever have something like that with YouTube? Like have like a major failure with YouTube or something that you did and then you kind of brought yourself back up?
No. Not really. I mean, I've much like with the regular content publishing on LockerGnome, it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. I don't know. It's difficult to say. I've taken a different publishing schedule recently, and while some people don't like it, I know that it's ultimately been good for what we needed it to be good for. For a while, we were published. This is a long time ago. We used to do, when I really got into YouTube, it was like 5 videos a day, and then maybe a year later it was like 3 videos or so a day, and then it was down to about that, and it continued to be that way really until a few months ago when we started doing the live broadcast, and now I would say it's almost twice as much, 4 to 8 videos a day. And experimenting with those models, has been interesting. Some people would make the assertion that, Chris, you're failing on YouTube because you're getting fewer views per video. But I'm getting an equal amount of views for every video, and I'm able to stabilize and grow. More importantly, my goal was not to drive up more views per video. My goal was to A, produce more videos, and B, drive more traffic back to LockerGnome.com, and we did that. So some people would see it as a failure. You failed because you're getting fewer views per video, but that's not what I was going for. I was going for more traffic to LockerGnome as part of the equation, and that worked. So it was a success, and it continues to be a success. And I'm always looking for ways to better optimize the kind of flow that we can bring to LockerGnome.com content every day from YouTube, and really kind of create that the circle with what we do every day. It's a perceived failure, but it's absolutely not a failure. And you could look at it that way, but if you're meeting your goals, it's not a failure. Most people would have different goals, but that's their goals. It's not my goal. My goals tend to be completely different from others' goals, but every business has to work in a different way. The way that my business would succeed would not mean that somebody else, even doing the same thing, could have the same degree of success for one reason or another. Well, I'm glad you guys like hearing about my failures. It's a good thing. I think the bottom line is really, and I don't want to belabor the point, when you see success, you can try to match that success, but you're going to be serving yourself and your business better by learning where people have failed rather than where they succeeded, because you don't want to make the same mistakes that someone else has made. To think that you'd be any different. I guess a corollary would be, imagine you're in high school, or maybe even right now. You're dating someone, and everyone tells you, dude, that person cheats on everyone they date. Like, what? No, I'll be different. They're never going to cheat on me. And then, at some point in the future, inevitably, they cheat on you. You can't be shocked. People warned you. They let you know. But you thought you were going to be different. No. Very rarely, very rarely would that work out to your benefit, especially if the same pitfalls were hit over and over and over again. It's difficult to navigate those, though, because there's so many variables at play with business that it's something that you have to keep in mind. Sometimes learning from where people have failed can keep you from making that same failure. Even if you just tweak the model just a tiny bit and do it slightly differently, that could spell all the difference. More resources, putting the resources in different buckets, doing something slightly differently could mean success, where it spelt failure for somebody else. So don't concentrate so much on other people's successes as much as wanting to learn from their failures, because ultimately that will make your business a stronger business.
I have a question. How did your name come to being?
My name? Are you talking historically speaking?
The Locker Gnome name. How did you create it? And
yes. You want to talk about something that I've regretted off and on for going with Locker Gnome. It's an old high school nickname. That's all. Doesn't mean anything. And I registered it after graduating from college, back when I could have registered just about any.com for $70. That's how much it cost. And I could have owned probably any awesome domain name. And yeah. I went with Locker Gnome because it meant something to me, and I tried to make it mean something to everybody else. And so, yeah, for better or for worse, it didn't. I never locked it into one arena or another. It's never been just about technology. It's never been about general geekery. It's just been Locker Gnome, and it is what I've made it. That's. So I guess it's a good thing. I mean, there's times that I wish that I would have gone with something a bit more targeted in terms of the brand, but on the other hand, it stands out. It still stands out. So I appreciate having that brand flexibility at this point. It'd be easier to reinvent Locker Gnome because of that. And I think that the future where the brand is headed is definitely, it's still in providing information and creating content, but I think if I were to have broad sweeping brushstrokes, it would be geekery, not just specifically technology. I think anything where we can create content that is entertaining and informative and very useful, very tangible, that's the type of content that I love reading and I love sharing. Bringing in the personal story into the whole equation that so many people have not done. It's easy to publish a how-to, but I always steer towards where's the personality in this. What makes this enjoyable to read? And if it's not enjoyable to read, I don't expect people would. So I drive for that entertainment value as much as I do the informational value. Even down to the videos that I do, it's very rare that I'd upload a video that I did not find useful. I at least want something, if not useful, then entertaining, at least in my mind. One of the two, hopefully both at the same time. But I don't believe in wasting people's time with a lot of those videos. A lot of reasons why when I do these hangouts that, number one, they're just for those who've registered on Gnomies.com. Two, they tend to be focused on small business efforts and business efforts. And three, hopefully information is relayed rather than just kind of babbling on and on incessantly that nobody would watch that again and again. Hopefully, with this topic on hand, And it, you know, even the question of where did you get your nickname, you could consider it a failure because I didn't focus it enough that someone could look at it and know exactly what kind of content was being shared or what kind of service it was. It was tremendously generic, but I believe that's been just as successful as much as it's been a failure. More successful than a failure. Well, 15 years, I guess, and still floating. You know, being able to pay, you know, my bills and the bills of other people, I would say is a success. But
Well, what is going on with geeks?
you mean like people who are geeks?
No, geeks.brillo.com.
Ah, okay. So going back to failures. So
I just heard a drastic decline of the advertisement of geeks.brillo.com.
okay, so let's see if I can set the stage correctly. I was using at one point WordPress MU. I was using it for quite some time, and it was so unstable, and I could not keep the website running. And most of my ad revenues were being driven through LockerGnome.com at that point. Well, some, not all. And I needed a website up when Chris.Pirillo.com or LockerGnome.com were down. I'm like, I can't do this. Like, everything's down and no one's got a place to be. So I, on a whim, went to Ning and set up a network. And then, since most of what I was branding on YouTube at that point was, you know, Chris.Pirillo.com. This is me. It's Chris Pirillo. Come and hi. My username's LockerGnome. There was really a massive disconnection, which today has been largely addressed through some of our more recent efforts with the LockerGnome Daily Report, or TLDR for short. So I set up geeks.pirillo.com, said, oh, it's, you know, and it was a lot of fun. It was cool. You know, Ning in the beginning had an amazing suite of tools. They didn't quite get community, though. Putting up a forum, sure, it's a forum, but they, even now, after they were acquired by Glam, still have no idea how to operate community on its own velocity. So geeks.pirillo.com existed. And then at some point over the last year, we had a company come to us and say, hey, you know, you've got, you know, a pretty good audience and a pretty good direction and pretty good content here. How would you like to join us as this, you know, bigger network and, you know, possibly be acquired? And I was like, oh, that's interesting, you know, sure. And they said, well, we don't really want to acquire you. We want to acquire LockerGnome, the brand, since it has, you know, such a big presence on YouTube and the website and this, and this. And so I realized, I'm like, crud. So this community exists on geeks.pirillo.com. Although geeks.lockergnome.com was redirecting to it, we basically flipped them. So it was geeks.lockergnome.com. But then, you know, after launching lockergnome.net, because Ning was kind of petering out and was not providing a lot of community velocity, I used lockergnome.net to run OSQA on, and then funneled a lot of people to lockergnome.net, which is really addressing the primary needs of a lot of the community. That is asking questions and getting them answered, and that's exactly what the open source platform OSQA can do. That's still running on lockergnome.net. It's a 90,000 answers, 25,000 questions. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, I would say it's very healthy, extremely healthy, and considering how much time that I've been able to spend on it, it's been a runaway success. But geeks.pirillo, geeks.lockergnome.com, this site, after another thing that happened last year was Google made some changes, largely known as Panda. This is not after a creature, but actually someone's last name. And Panda knocked us for a loop, and it was seen that using subdomains off of a primary domain could have been damaging. So just recently, I redirected geeks.pirillo.com and geeks.lockergnome.com, which still exist on Ning, to a temporary web domain, which is, I guess, it's a permanent redirect, but geekwith.com. I just registered it like in 5 minutes. I just needed a different domain to point it to. So now all that content exists. I mean, I still have that, but geekwith.com is the new domain for it, and I would love to be able to potentially sell that to somebody else who wanted to kind of pick up the ball and run with it. It's just right now, Ning had priced what they have completely out of the realm of what we could afford to do. They won't. I mean, we've produced so much content there. Ning won't even support it. It's crazy, and it's crazy expensive to run. And we're not getting anything from it at this point. It's too expensive, and so that it's a bad business decision for me to continue with it. Now, someone else who's got the time, who wants to start, with that audience, I'd be more than willing to talk about someone else. Yeah, fine, take it. Ultimately, what's going to happen with that audience if someone doesn't adopt that Ning network and take it from me? Now, granted, that's not going to be for free because it took a lot of time and energy and a lot of effort to get it going. And granted, a Ning network with 30,000 members is no small network, certainly for any community. What's going to happen is I'm probably going to migrate it, or the plan is to migrate it to a different platform and take a completely different direction with it. So take the same membership and do something that we haven't done yet that I've wanted to do for quite some time. So I don't want to tell you what we're going to do exactly, but I'm taking that failure, not failure, perceived failure, or something that could have been more successful, and turning it into something that I believe can be successful. I'm going to transform it into my dream of, and actually you could probably go back to YouTube and read it, or either watch it or read on my blog. I don't remember if I did a video on it, Undo TV. So I've had UndoTV.com registered for years and Undo.tv as well, and it was my hope to be able to help people inside of our community, the greater community, not just the Nomies community, but people who follow me, to be able to get more subscribers for one another. And I think I figured out a way to do it. Through YouTube, through legal, legitimate means, organic subscriber growth based on people who are a part of the greater Locker Gnome community. So I'm going to take that construct and the geeks memberships and bring them over to Undo TV. And I think that everyone, especially those who are producing content on YouTube, is going to be thrilled about it. And people, even who love the content that we're producing on YouTube, should be thrilled about it as well. So I'm taking that pseudo-failure and will be soon, and over the course of the next few months, turning that into something that is different, that hasn't been seen yet, and that will work very well and require very little work for anybody who would join, and they would reap the benefits from it. So I can't be any more descriptive than that, other than looking at something that wasn't working as well as it could have, or that it used to, and try to make it work better. And that's another thing I do with failures, is try to make them less faily. So that's the story with the Ning network that will soon be no more, that someone else may want to continue to run, but if they don't, I'm going to shutter it. So after the database has been migrated, naturally. And I've already sent out an email message to everybody telling them the situation. I said, look, it's too expensive. Ning isn't developing. They're not really helping in the areas that they could help. So much about community. A lot of these services could do a better job with it. YouTube could do a better job with community. Google+, Twitter, I mean, any of these places could do a fantastically better job with community, even providing the tools. Like BuddyPress inside of WordPress. I mean, it's an extension. It's not, there's no velocity inside it. There's no, you can't just add people and just expect community to grow. There are certain things that they could do better. But that's a completely different topic, building community for a completely different day. Maybe we'll do that for next week's Nomies Hangout. Any other fail questions?
Thank you.
No other fail questions? Really?
What was your biggest failure?
I've done my best to turn every failure into a success. So my idea with Gotta Be, that's GADA.be, that turned into tagjag.com, it made money. In fact, it made more money with the change that I made than I paid for its development. So I got more out of it ultimately than I lost. So it was a failure in the sense that I tried something without having all the resources on hand. It was a success, and people who used it loved it. I had the right idea, but I just couldn't scale it, and it was. I kept all those amazing, unsolicited quotes. I mean, the idea was right, but it's not the idea; it's the implementation. So after a few scaling issues, and after the developer moved on to other projects, I made a couple of changes and was able to bring it to generate revenue on every click, and that was, I would say, successful. I mean, because I didn't really have to do anything, and it was residual revenue. But I would say that was probably my biggest failure. Right now, TagJag and all those old domains are pointing to probably just a throwaway domain, the will you like this that I set up like in a weekend. It was just kind of a stupid, I wonder how many people would actually like this if I ask them, will you like this? And like, it got like 4,000 or 5,000 likes on Facebook, which is insane. They did. I mean, I would consider that a success, but I didn't put anything into it. I've got all these old domains pointing there because I'm probably, that's not where I'm driving most of my revenue, and I also don't want them to be hurting me, at least within the search engines in the SEO realm. So again, failure turned into success. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes it's impossible to do. But I don't think there's been a failure that I haven't been able to mitigate. So I find it very difficult to say what's been the biggest failure that I'd have to think pretty hard about what was the biggest failure that I couldn't recoup costs from, or you can never get back time. But that was that was a pretty big one. But like I said, it made money, and so it wasn't a failure, but it was a failure. I like looking at failures, but I also have the mindset of trying to turn them into successes. Questions?
Speaking of the Geeks.pro or Geeks.Lockernome, how about like Help.Lockernome? What are you going to do with that? That's another good question.
Help.Lockernome.com. Now, I'm a big fan of what they call co-brands. And over the years, I've launched a variety of co-brands, and some of which have been, I would say very successful. Help.Lockernome.com would be one of them. I set up years ago. I was still, so long ago. It was offered to me the ability to host a set of private news groups, like using the Usenet or like an NNTP reader, way back in the day, the Lockernome news groups. And there are some people who still hate me for having to shut those down. But they were very popular for Lockernome, and I was happy to have them. Problem was, it was impossible to moderate, and a lot of political, not discussions, just the politics of community. It was difficult to moderate and manage, so ultimately, I can't even remember what predicated it, but we shut them down. People were really upset about it. Some people have never forgiven me. We then, a few years later, set up, I can't remember which bulletin board software it was, but we set up, I think it was help.lockernome.com, hosted it on our own, but God, it kept crashing and problem after problem after problem. It just wasn't worth it. I was like, oh my God, I'd spend more time troubleshooting problems than I would be, doing what I could do better than trying to troubleshoot problems or telling someone, hey, this needs to be fixed. So ultimately, I set up a co-brand with another group wherein they would be responsible for the hosting and the optimization and everything, and we would basically split ad revenues. And that's exactly what we've done over the years. So help.lockernome.com still exists. In fact, it recently underwent somewhat of a facelift or a usability facelift, and hopefully that has improved usability to a large degree. It's still there. And I've never done much promotions on it. It's not that forums aren't awesome. It's just I know a lot more people are using Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter and or Lockernome.net these days. So help.lockernome.com still exists, but by and large, it's not something that I'm paying a lot of attention to or funneling a lot of traffic to. But it'll still exist. Other co-brands that I've done, Bluff. a series of comics illustrated by Brad Fitzpatrick. Amazing illustrations. We're actually in the process of putting those illustrations together in a compilation to redo as like an ebook or even an app on iOS or Android, because they were amazing comics. So we're going to be transforming what's on Laugh.com and what worked in the beginning to what's something that at least could potentially drive more revenue than has been driving now. And at this point, it hasn't been driving revenue. We drove most of the revenue through sponsorship with GoDaddy. A lot of the original Laugh comics had a little tagline in there from GoDaddy, and I mean, it made money. And that ultimately was its success. Its downfall was that the model didn't scale. But we did get a lot of traffic for what our plan was, and we executed on it well. And now it's time to kind of look at reinventing what it is. So by the time if you look at it today, it may be different from what's going to get applied to it over the next few weeks or so. Turning Laugh.com more into a gateway to, hey, get the app. We've got it in this app store. If you like these comics, here's where you can get them. Co-brands are big. I love co-brands. They can be dangerous though. If your co-brand is not unique, you're just like everybody else. If I came to you and said, I'm going to set up a partnership with you, and we're going to do this together. Yeah, that's cool. But if I turn around and do that with 10 other people, 100 other people, there's nothing unique about our relationship anymore. And that is not, to me, that's not a true co-brand. A true co-brand would have been something like coupons.lockergnome.com, where I worked with Todd Martini on creating a coupons database based on what he was publishing on alexscoupons.com, just using and leveraging LockerGnome's brand, and that was extremely successful. Ultimately now, again, going back to the changes we've done with SEO, much like geeks.prillo and geeks.lockergnome.com have been redirected to geekwith.com. Coupons.lockergnome.com is now a permanent redirect to coupondealpromos.com, which is not associated with LockerGnome at all anymore. We're kind of cleaning up a lot of that. So I think the day and age of sharing coupons is kind of come and gone, at least to this point. It may change. I'd rather, right now, try to negotiate valuable coupons for Nomies than I would, trying to provide them for the greater part of the internet. I'm driving Nomies pretty hard, and in spending a lot of my time making sure that it has the ability to grow and be successful. And like I said, it's exceeded my expectations by a massive, massive degree. But that doesn't mean that should a valuable idea for a co-brand come along, I wouldn't take it. I've had a lot of successes with co-brands, combining my strengths with someone else's strengths to be able to come up with something we couldn't come up with independently on our own. That makes a really good co-brand, and I've been able to do what I do to make it successful, and they've been able to do what they do to make it successful. And I've had just a handful, really, I would say, of very popular co-brands, what I would consider partnerships over the years. Very, very, very successful. But those are very few and far between. Only if you can find the right person to partner with. I get opportunities that come up, but unfortunately they're just not structured in a way that makes it worth doing. For me, at least. Any other questions? These are good questions, by the way, on the subject of failures. Now, I'm not saying that we're all failures. I'm saying it's important to watch where other people fail, how they fail. See, I can go into the specifics, but I probably won't in this video, but things to watch out for. This is largely why, I'm ready for something like Nomies, because when someone asks a question, I can tell them, hey, dude, don't do that, because this, or watch out for this, because that might happen, and give them that advice to save them so much time and headache, and hopefully that advice resonates.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about creating a secondary brand? A secondary brand that would be based it would be based on I'm trying to think. Like another business community, but based on like game developers or something like that.
So I've inadvertently created a lot of brands over time. Whether it was Locker Gnome, Gnome Decks, now Gnomies, Chris Perillo, I would say is probably as much of a strong brand. And I would say those have been the strongest efforts I've done, because I've created other things as well to various degrees of success and failure. If I were to do something like that, it would probably be a subset of Gnomies, not necessarily a completely independent brand, if only to better leverage what existing efforts existed. Or I would do it as potentially in conjunction with somebody else, as kind of like a leader for it. So there would be, I would think in terms of how I would make that successful today. What I would probably do is identify someone who had the strengths of building community, business savvy, and leadership, to say, hey, why don't we create and I'm just throwing something against the wall. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying that if I were to try to work it today, here's how I would do it. Why don't we create a subdomain on Gnomies, call it gamedevelopment.gnomies.com or something like that, and we'll do this under the Gnomies brand. You be the leader, and you get X% of the subscribers, who come in specifically for that set of resources. And that way, not only would I be able to address that part of a community for a mastermind group, but I'd also be able to benefit the whole and be able to give rise to another business opportunity for someone who says, well, Chris, I have an idea. What about creating a Gnomies community for people who give tech support to people as a business? Okay, well, then I got to identify a leader, and then boom. What about, video bloggers? Sure, okay, then. So I'd be able to more effectively scale out the model that way by assigning different managers for each one of those types of membership systems, which would, again, come back and benefit the Gnomies brand as a whole. Creating a new brand at this point would be a tremendous challenge. Because I don't necessarily have unlimited resources at my disposal, and I'm building this a lot on my strengths. The reason why it's Gnomies, really, a long time ago, something I did, it was called Chris Perillo's Brain Trust, and it was $97 a month, and it was definitely profitable. It worked very, very well. But ultimately it was too... I didn't want to put myself at the center of it, but a lot of people were turning to me as the center of it, but I was trying to build up other people, and so going with a generic name, Gnomies, kind of sounds fun, like Gnomies? What? That's kind of, what is this? It's got that factor going for it. It's generic, and so it could potentially grow that way. I mean, right now this is kind of a general business, let's see what we can help people with their business, and it's working, answering questions like that. But if I were to go after targeted groups, I would be thinking probably going more in that direction by being able to find managers for those subgroups. The problem is making sure I've got what I need done and handled so that I would be able to scale to that point and be able to set up an infrastructure so that it could work, and then basically I could create businesses for other people within the Gnomies brand. Creating businesses for other businesses. It's kind of this weird little thing. It's not a Ponzi scheme, not at all. There's real value in it, and I'm big into that. I'm big into driving a lot more value than what I ask for in returns, or what I ask for in terms of compensation. And hopefully every Gnomie here, the registered Gnomies, agree.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, you're making me sweat there, isn't it? Okay, you weren't saying anything. You're the only one who agrees?
I disagree.
Oh,
I agree.
you liar, Creighton.
Of course, Creighton disagrees.
All right. I agree.
You guys are making me sweat over here, man. Come on, I mean,
Just a quiet group.
It's difficult to make everybody happy. It is, but ultimately, I know what I have to offer, and I know what people are asking for, and I know I can give it. So.
I found I was just searching for Nomies, and I found this one website which is available. It is spelled Nomies.
Do I want to see it? Let's not talk about a website we don't own, okay? Let's not go that direction. Although I did, thanks to someone, he told me, Harold, one of the people who's now a regular contributor on LockerGnome.com, said that Nomies was available, GNOMI.ES. So that currently redirects to Nomies.com.
There's, okay. But, yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm afraid where that's
I was
leading.
going to go ahead and wind down. I didn't want to, wax pathetic for too long here on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for, joining.
Oh, gosh. Did you ever look up the Urban Dictionary definition of Nomies?
No, and I'm not going to.
It's
Our
hilarious.
goal is to bring. I've had the domain forever, and I've been calling my subscribers Nomies from 1996 on. So that's what it means to me. That's all that matters.
Well,
If
Urban
you-
Dictionary.
Here's
Oh boy,
what you
Craig.
need to do.
Straight out.
What you need to do is you need to go into Urban Dictionary and redefine Nomies.
There you go.
Small business owners who love driving value back to one another. That's what Nomies is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who's going to do it? Who's going to update Urban Dictionary? Hello? Nobody?
Nope.
It's easier to point in Google than it is to make changes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to change something on Urban Dictionary?
No, I've never done it before.
It takes forever.
Bureaucracy.
I've heard it's possible, but I've never done it.
Yeah, it's just... it's
Well,
different groups, babe.
that's what Nomies means to me. And you know what? We own the .com, so that's all that matters.
There you go.
Any other questions before we wind this down?
I was wondering what's going on with Numdex.
Thank you again for bringing up failures.
Oh, yeah.
You knew that was going to come in at some point.
GnomeDex was an annual failure that was superseded by its success. It's on hiatus. It's been on hiatus really since the last one I did, 2010. We kind of did a couple of events last year in 2011 that were profitable, but weren't really what GnomeDex was. I'm in the process of negotiating the ability to bring GnomeDex back in its former glory, and stay tuned for that. But it can't happen on. I'm doing it on my own. I can't put it off. I've been looking for that right partner to be able to do it, an event company or something of the like, and possibly have found that group. And whether that'll work, I don't know. But it was it was the best and some of the best and worst times of my life. Very stressful. I mean, I'd have nightmares about that thing. But it was wonderful. I mean, this sense of community that was evoked from that experience, ongoing for a decade. It was an amazing, amazing, amazing conference, and I think can still be an amazing conference. But I'm not going to put myself on the line again like I've done in the past, and that's where it's like I said, it's on hiatus. So it was a failure, but it succeeded. It was a failure in the sense that we didn't have every resource we should have had, but it was a success because people loved it, and they didn't want it to die. And they still don't want it to die, and so I'm doing my best to make sure it doesn't necessarily die, but I can't. This is where I recognize that I would not be doing it any favors if I tried to do it again the way that we've done it in the past. It was a monumental undertaking every single year, and since we weren't in an event development or events management company,
Coordinator?
that's what I would say. We ran into failures because of that, and a series of failures that it's just kind of weird. Like you always hear 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, oddly enough, everything that went wrong with GnomeDex made it right. So it was kind of like the stress that one went through. I mean, it was like that. But at the end of the day, you're just kind of like, wow, everyone had a good time, and we made money, so I guess it was fine. But what you have to go through to make something like that happen, I do not envy any event producer. And we get it. Like, event producer will look at each other like, I know, dude. Trust me, I know. And they're like, ugh. So I have a kindred, kindred spirit in every one of the event producers out there. especially those who have been to Gnome Decks or had been to Gnome Decks, I'd like to believe it'll come back, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make it come back, but I'm also not, anxious. If the opportunity arises, it arises. If no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and wind this down because I know that the rewatchability decreases the longer something goes on, and I definitely did want to keep it focused. Granted, I couldn't go in depth into a lot of the responses, but if you do have any more specific questions on one thing or another, I'd be happy to expound upon them in any one of the Gnomies chat groups, whether it's IRC, potentially TeamSpeak, potentially a podcast, one of our Wednesday webinars, Google Plus, I guess, kind of, although Google Plus is not a great group tool other than through Hangouts. The Facebook group, the LinkedIn group, definitely, the Mailman discussion list. We've got a lot of places to, I guess, discuss things related to what we want to talk about. Anyway, if anybody else wants to join us for the next Google Plus Hangout, you can. I'm trying to do this once a week. Trying. Won't always happen, but once a week, a Google Plus Hangout specifically with Gnomies to be broadcast on Google Plus to my 764,000 people who have circled me. And then also this video will be recorded for posterity and put onto our YouTube channel at youtube.com/LockerGnome. So everybody, thanks for joining me, and I now return you to your regularly scheduled weekend.
Oh joy.
Will you later?
Order.